Good morning everyone. My name is Dr. Sonam Sharma and I teach here as an assistant professor in Chandigarh Business School of Administration. And today's topic, what we are going to discuss is about the mergers and acquisitions. Right? Talking about mergers and acquisitions on a whole, merger and acquisition comes under every day we get to listen that this company acquired the other company, or we got to listen two banks got merged, Vodafone got merged with Idea. What is this all about? This is all about corporate restructuring. Corporate restructuring. Corporate restructuring is the process of redesigning one or more aspects of a company. That means whenever you reorganize, whenever you merge, club two companies together, or maybe you acquire each other's resources, that is called as corporate restructuring. Not only mergers, but there are other terms that relate under this corporate restructuring on a broader aspect. So, this is a process of reorganizing a company that may be implemented due to a number of different factors, such as you might want to position your company in a better way in the market. You might you're going into losses. That's also one reason. You are currently facing any adverse economic climate or poised the corporation to move in an entirely new direction, or you want to cater into a new segment of the market. That is why you enter into doing the process of corporate restructuring. Why corporate restructuring actually occurs? Corporate restructuring occurs, it has different types. The different types are, the first is organization management restructuring. You want to reorganize the management, you want to reorganize the entire team that is working with you. Then you want to enhance the portfolio and asset restructuring. For example, you might have listened, HUL acquired the Glaxo Industries, one segment of food, and then they acquired the Glenmark's Pharmaceuticals. That is, they entered into the food portfolio or the asset portfolio of that company. That then is financial restructuring. Financial restructuring is quite understandable in the term, because financial restructuring is when you do it in monetary terms. When we talk about the types of restructuring, these are the four things when you go for restructuring. The four major types why you are going to do corporate restructuring. And when we talk about corporate restructuring, the first one is expansion. You want to expand the company, expand your portfolio, you want to expand the entire diversification of your company. Then it is either merger or acquisition or takeover or a tender offer or a joint venture. On a broader terminology, we're going to talk about mergers and acquisitions today, but because you should know the basics, that is why I'm telling you, the basic terminologies behind this mergers and acquisition. The second reason could be contraction. You want to contract your term. Contraction is you enter into sell-offs, spin-offs, split-offs, and then split-ups. There are four things: spin-offs, split-ups, and sell-offs. Divestitures and equity carve-out. The third reason is corporate control. When we talk about corporate control, it is takeover defenses, share purchases, exchange offers, or proxy contests. And the fourth reason why we went into corporate restructuring is you want the changes in the ownership. And when we talk about ownership changes, it is either leverage buyout or you are going private. Every day nowadays we listen about getting companies privatized. So that is going private. Coming on to what is merger all about. Firstly, the merger refers to the process where at least two companies, it could be more also, combine to form one single entity, combine to form one single company. The business firms make use of mergers and acquisitions for the consolidation of markets as well as for gaining the competitive edge in the industry. So merger is when, for example, company A and company B come together to form company C. That is one type of merger. Or, company A and company B comes together and the name remains for company A or for company B. That is also one type of merger. These companies, the business firms, enter into corporate restructuring or enter into mergers basically in order to either get a competitive edge over the market or to expand their portfolio. Merger is a financial tool that is used for enhancing long-term profitability by expanding their operations. So basically, it is to expand the operations of one single entity. You get to get the resources of the other company, you get to know the customers of the other company, and then you can expand as a whole. Mergers occur when a merging company have their mutual consent as different from acquisitions, which can take the form of hostile takeover. Acquisitions now. In mergers, both the companies agree to certain terms and conditions, and then they enter into the merger basing on some terms and conditions based on some contract. But when we talk about acquisitions, it could be hostile also, it could be forcibly done also. Moving further about merger or amalgamation. These are two terms that are used in synonyms, and when you enter into the financial terminology, then you get to know about what liquidation is all about, what amalgamation is all about. But here, when we talk about merger or amalgamation, that can form, that can get into consideration in two forms. The first is absorption, and another is consolidation. Absorption is the combination of two or more companies into an existing company. Just like I said, there are two companies A and B, and then these two companies merge into A, or these two companies merge into company B. But when we talk about consolidation is the combination of two or more companies into a new company. Company A and company B, they two merge together and they form a company C. That is consolidation. So these are two types of mergers that generally take place in the business world. In a merger, there is a complete amalgamation of all the assets and liabilities. All the assets, all the liabilities that a company had in their name are amalgamated, are consolidated, as well as the shareholders' interest in the business of the merging companies. सब चीज को pay off कर दो, all the assets are sold, all the liabilities are paid, and then the interest of the company is transferred to the other company. All the shareholders are paid. There is yet another mode of merger. There is one company may purchase another company without giving proportionate ownership to the shareholders of the acquired company or without continuing the business of the acquired company. In other way, the merger can also take place. That means, the shareholders that have the ownership, access to your company are paid proportionate ownership in the other company. For example, we have two shareholders, Ram and Sham, in company A, and the company A and company B gets merged into company B. They do not pay while amalgamating the company. They do not pay the shareholders their interest, but rather they give the proportionate amount of shares in company B. Right? Why do we enter into mergers? Why actually mergers takes place? The first reason could be strategic benefit. Strategic benefit is due to competition. You might enter into a merger because of the high competition that is coming into the market. You want to enter into a new segment of market. You want to maybe enter into a niche product or another product line. Another is risk and cost. The risk and cost involved in setting up your own unit into a new product line is huge. While if you would like to go for a merger, it is quite easy, and you get to get all the resources for the other company as well. You get all the customer base available, you get all the resources, all the employees available. That is why the strategic benefit lies there for workers. Then there's complementary resources. All the resources are also available to you, just like I said. Second is tax benefits. All the accumulated losses are borne by the merged company. Right? Therefore, you get tax benefits as well. Unabsorbed depreciation. There is a as we're talking about the tax benefits, there is a terminology called as unabsorbed depreciation. Whenever you get to use the assets, all of you know that some depreciation always occurs on all those assets. So when there is a term called unabsorbed depreciation, that takes us to huge tax increase. And all these, whenever we go for a merger, all these are exempted. Government incentives could be taken care. Sales and excise duty benefits are also given to the merged company, depending upon the product line and what product line you will enter in. Third is utilization of surplus funds. For example, company A and company B are merging together, and one company is having surplus fund available for that. The other company gets the benefit to use that surplus fund in their own, working capital, in their own day-to-day activities. Managing effectiveness. You also get to work with enhanced team, diversified team when you go for a merger. आपको दोनों कंपनीज की टीम मिल जाती है, दोनों कंपनीज का एम्प्लॉय बेस मिल जाता है, and you get to choose from the best of employees for yourself. Then is diversification. The product line also gets diversified. Lower financing costs. Whenever you go for a merger, the financing cost for setting up the own unit is quite huge. And if you choose to go for a merger, if you choose to go for a merger for setting up a new product line, it is the financial benefits are high. Earning growth rate. The growth rate also increases. Most of the companies enter into merger in order to earn huge profits, in order to get the share price of that company, in order to get the customer base of that company, in order to expand themselves as a huge profit earning firm, right? Okay. Now coming on to the types of mergers. There are 4 types of mergers. As we talked about what is merger, we talked about what is acquisition. We talked about the reasons, the benefits that take us to a merger. Now we talk about the types of mergers. There are 4 types of mergers: the horizontal one, vertical merger, conglomerate merger, and concentric merger. Okay. When we talk about horizontal merger is a merger when 2 or more companies competing in the same line of activities merge together. The effect on the market would be either large or a little to no effect. Whenever 2 companies that are dealing in the same product line get for a merger, for example, the recent merger that took place 4-5 years back, ING, Vyasa and Kotak Mahindra Bank. Both the companies are working in the banking sector. Therefore, they are working in the same lines of the business. So the effect on the market is quite less. बहुत ज़्यादा market को फर्क नहीं आता क्योंकि same set of the only thing that happened was that the people who were using ING Vyasa Bank got to get the name of Kotak Mahindra. Right? Number of firms in an industry will be reduced due to horizontal merger, and this may lead to firms to earn huge monopoly profits. Basically, the companies, the business firms enter into horizontal merger in order to get the monopolistic benefit, in order to earn the monopoly in the market. And then these horizontal mergers are regulated by the government for their negative effect on competition. So they want to reduce the competition as a whole. That is why they enter into horizontal mergers. So any merger that takes place, any 2 companies that merge together, that are dealing with the same product line and do not create a huge effect in the market, comes under the horizontal merger. Just like you mentioned the example here, the the ACC Cement merged with Damoda Cement way back 7 8 years back. Then in 2010, Bank of Rajasthan merged with ICICI Bank. So both these firms are from the banking industry, both these are from the cement industry. So therefore, when two companies coming from the same industry merge together they form a horizontal merger. Then is vertical merger. So vertical merger is whenever two companies producing different goods or services to form one specific finished product. Right? Two companies that come together, merge together, but they form, they are producing two components of one finished product. For example, if I talk about, just for example, for example, when we're talking about a car manufacturer, there are two companies, one is producing the DSX, the other is producing the seat covers. So now these two companies, two firms who are producing different goods, but they are forming a part of similar set of finished product. Those two companies come together, they form a vertical merger. It refers to a situation where a product manufacturer merges with the supplier of inputs or raw material. It could be the other way around also, that the product manufacturer and the raw material supplier gets merged together to form one single entity in order to reduce the costs. These are known as vertical mergers, or these are also known as vertical foreclosures. And why these vertical mergers take place? Because they want to reduce the cost reduction comes, and then minimization of the transportation cost. Specifically, when we're talking about this type of vertical merger, wherein the supplier of the raw material and the product manufacturer comes together and forms one single entity, they tend to reduce the transportation cost. They get all the sources available at one single place. Right? Then we talk about three examples. There are three types of vertical mergers. Backward vertical merger. Backward vertical merger is HLL, Hindustan Lever Limited, and Tata Tea with tea gardens in Assam and West Bengal. They got merged together. HUL actually took the name of Tata Tea. You might have seen, number of firms, number of products in the FMCG industry comes under the banner of HUL. Then PPL with Upfront Color Pictures. Then all the both these companies, Upfront Color Pictures are the product manufacturers of color scheme, and BPL are the manufacturer of TV sets. Right? Forward vertical merger. The oil companies buying up service stations. Whenever all the oil companies like Indian Oil, Bharat Petroleum, and other oil companies, they tend to acquire the service stations. You might have seen that, on the petrol pumps or the gas stations. Whenever you go and visit, you see all the hoardings that are owned by the gas manufacturers, by the oil companies. So these type of mergers are vertical mergers, forward vertical mergers. Right? The third type of merger there is conglomerate merger. Conglomerate merger is a merger between firms that are involved in totally unrelated business. Now there are, the two firms are totally unrelated. They do not have any relation with each other. That merger, when these two types of companies come together to form one single entity, this type of merger is known as conglomerate mergers. Pure and mixed. There are two types of conglomerate mergers: pure conglomerate and mixed conglomerate. Why this conglomerate merger comes into existence or comes into the market is because this kind of mergers are increasing market share and enhancing the synergy at the cross selling also. For example, if I say the merger between the Walt Disney Company and the American Broadcasting Company, or the recent merger that you might have heard about, Walmart and Flipkart. Now these are two companies that do not deal in the similar set of products, but then also the merger took place. Right? They also merged to diversify and reduce the risk exposure. And the fourth and the last type of merger is the type concentric mergers. There is a type of merger where the two companies coming together to share some common expertise that may process mutually advantages. Why they come into, and why they enter into a merger? Because they want to earn any advantages benefit out of those two companies. The common expertise may be managerial or technological know-how that may not be industry or product specific. For example, if Infosys is acquired by any manufacturing firm, that would be called as concentric merger, because one is technological benefited, another is manufacturing benefited. Right? In short, combining two or more businesses in order to pool expertise. This is basically to earn the expertise from both the companies. Right? The examples, merger between motorcycle manufacturing firm and automobile manufacturing would be an example. For example, Hyundai and Honda, these two come together. The two-wheeler segment of Honda and the four-wheeler segment of Hyundai comes together and forms one single entity that would be called as concentric merger. Now, we talked about these types of mergers, how we enter into mergers, what are the legal procedures of entering into any merger or an acquisition. It is, first of all, there is a team that analyzes that the motive behind the merger should be very, very clear. The analysis of the merger offer is done. The motive should be clear, the impact on stock price is calculated, and the effect on brand image is also calculated. Now, there's a team behind in all the companies that talk about that whether a brand image is being affected in a positive way or a brand image is going down in a negative way. And then only they decide that whether they should go for a merger or not. Just like you might have heard that SBI almost acquired or merged with all the other SBI Surashtra was merged with SBI Patiala was merged with SBI. Now there is a single entity called as State Bank of India that is dealing with all the segments of India. Now there is no State Bank of Patiala, there is no State Bank of Rajasthan, there is no State Bank of Saurashtra. All these entities merged into one single parent entity, that is State Bank of India. Now their motives were clear because their stock price would increase, their customer base would increase, the type of current assets they are having, the type of accounts they are getting from all the segments of the country would be huge, and their brand name would improvise. That is why they entered into this merger. Then is approval from the board of directors of both the companies for the merger. दोनों companies, company A or company B, both companies, both board of directors would sit together and analyze that whatever analysis has been done behind to analyze the motive of the merger is correct or not, and if they say yes, only then the merger takes place. Then the approval of the merger by the shareholders, all the stakeholders, the shareholders, the bankers, the trustees, and whomsoever you have taken, the company has taken involved money with the state, जिनका भी stake involved है उस company में, उन सबकी approval लेके, then only the merger takes place. Then is the intimation to stock exchange, wherever the company is listed, Bombay Stock Exchange or NSE, National Stock Exchange. The intimation of the merger is given to stock exchange where these firms are listed. Then the submission of application to the court, submission of journal meeting report to the chairman of the court. Now, आपने application submit कर दी. All the meetings that took place before submitting the application, wherein you decided about the merger, wherein you decided about your board of directors sat and discussed whether they should go for the merger or not. The meeting where you have taken the approval of the shareholders, all the minutes of the meetings are submitted. The report of the meeting are submitted to the chairman of the court. And hearing the petition and confirmation of the merger, the court order will be filed and ROC will be received by the merged company. The integration of assets and liabilities are then done in the financial terminology. उसके बाद आप अपने liabilities को pay off करते हो, अपने assets को sell करते हो, because you are approved to get into that merger. Okay? Then is amalgamation. While starting, we talked about that there are two synonym terms, mergers and amalgamations. We talked about mergers. If we want to talk about amalgamation on a broader aspect, it involves the fusion of one or more companies where the companies lose their individual identity and a new company comes into existence to take over the business of the companies being liquidated. While we talked about mergers could be two-way process. It could be A or B forming C. It could be A or B taking the name of either A or B. But then if we talk about amalgamation, it is the first concept only. That both the companies lose their identity and they form one single entity. Right? The merger of Brook Bond India Limited and Lipton India Limited, you might have listened to this because this is one product. Both these companies produce some of the products that are used in our day-to-day life. Brook Bond India Limited and Lipton India Limited resulted in the formation of a new company, Brook Bond Lipton India Limited. Now both the names have been sufficed off and they formed a new name called as Brook Bond Lipton India Limited. Right? Fourth terminology here is takeover. When we talked about mergers, two companies come together, a similar set of two companies come together form a new entity called as amalgamation. The third terminology here is takeover. The term takeover is understood in meaning. It is that it relates to the hostility of the company, that an acquisition is a forced one. Whenever you take over a company, it is that you acquire the company forcefully. It is a forced acquisition or an unwilling acquisition that is called as takeover. The holding company is a company that holds more than half of the nominal value of the equity capital of another company called as subsidiary company. While we talk about a holding and a subsidiary company, there are two companies. The holding company is which holds the more shares. For example, if we talk about two companies, one is having 60% shares, the other is having 40% share. The 60% one is the holding company and the 40% holder is the subsidiary company of that holding company, the subsidiary firm of that holding company, or controls the composition of its board of directors. Both the holding and the subsidiary companies retain their separate legal entities and maintain their separate book of accounts. Whenever we talk about two companies, for example, one holding and one subsidiary companies, both these companies maintain separate book of accounts, but then the holding companies has more shares than subsidiary companies and they have more right of ownership, they have more right of decision making over the subsidiary company. The fourth terminology here is absorption. This involves fusion of a small company with a large company where the smaller company ceases to exist after the merger. Okay. Absorption is whenever there are two companies, one is a smaller one is a larger one. The smaller one merges with the larger one. The large one acquires the smaller one and the small one ceases to exist after the merger. That is called as absorption. The merger of Tata Oils Mills Company Limited with Hindustan Lever Limited. Just like I also gave you the example of Hindustan Unilever Limited acquired Glenmark Pharmaceuticals, wherein some segment of pharmaceutical products are dealt with Hindustan Unilever, and then Hindustan Unilever also acquired Sterling GSK Limited, wherein they actually acquired the food segment, Horlicks and all those products that are sold by GSK are now comes under the banner of HUL. The fifth terminology here is tender offer. Tender offer is a smaller offer to purchase a given number of company shares at a specific price. Now, tender offer is, for example, हम किसी भी चीज़ का एक आपको subsidiary offer देते हैं कि इतने our share is of 100 rupees, but we give you an offer of to buy it at 60 rupees. That is tender offer. Tender offer is a formal offer to purchase a given number of company shares. For example, I am giving you the offer to buy 1000 shares of my company at 60 rupees each. Now that's a tender offer. Tender offer can be used in two situations. Firstly, it could be when your acquiring company may directly approach the target company. जो company acquire करना चाह रही है वो अपनी target company को उसको approach करती है for takeover. If the target company does not agree, then the acquiring company may directly approach the shareholders by means of tender offer. For example, company B wants to acquire company A. The board of directors of company B comes to company A and tells them that you want to take over your business. And if you do not agree, let's say company A does not agree to their offer, company B gives them a tender offer to purchase the shares at this much price, at a stipulated price. That's called as the tender offer. Secondly, there is other way around. The tender offer may be used without any negotiations and it may be tantamount to a hostile takeover. This could be, the process that was taken care of beforehand when B approaches A, company B approaches company A. That could be waived off in the second way, wherein it could be hostile takeover also. Right? This involves making a public company for acquiring the shares of the target company with a view to acquire management control in that company. So it could be with public companies also, wherein your public offer could be made to acquire the shares of your target company with a view to acquire management control in that company. A public offer could be given to the target company in order to get the control over the management of that company. Takeover by Tata Tea of the Consolidated Coffee Limited (CLL) is an example of tender offer, where more than 50% of the shareholders of CLL sold their holdings to Tata Tea at the offered price, which was more than the investment price. Now, herein, when we talk about the merger of these two companies, Tata Tea and CLL sold their holdings to Tata Tea at the counter offer, at the tender offer that company has given them. Then is asset acquisitions. While we talk about acquisitions may be defined as an act of acquiring effective control over the assets or the management of the company by another company without any combination of businesses or companies. It is where you acquire over the assets. आपने उसके assets को देख लिए, assets के ऊपर आपका control आ गया, ownership आ गई, that is acquisition. A substantial acquisition occurs when an acquiring firm acquires substantial quantity of shares or voting rights of the target company. Now, there are two types of acquisitions. One is two types of terminologies that are related to acquisitions. One is asset acquisition. Another is substantial acquisition. Substantial is where you purchase the shares. When you acquire a substantial quantity of shares that you get the voting rights of that company, and asset acquisition is where you get the control over the assets of the company. This involves buying assets of another company. The assets may be tangible assets or intangible assets, tangible like manufacturing units or intangible like brands, like goodwill. Right? H&L buying branch of Lakme is an example of asset acquisition. Right? Any company that buys the control over the assets of the other company is called as asset acquisition. Then is joint venture. Another term that is related to merger and acquisition is joint venture. Two companies come together for a particular venture. This involves two companies coming together for forming a new company whose ownership is changed. Generally, this strategy is adopted by MNCs to enter into foreign companies. Just like the name suggests, the two companies A or B or X or Y will come together to form a new company just to enter into a new venture, just to enter into a new segment of the market. DCM Group and Diver Motors entered into joint venture to form DCM Diver Limited to manufacturing automobiles in India. Right? Demergers. Talked about mergers, we talked about acquisitions, we talked about absorptions and other terminologies that relate to mergers. Now there is a term called as demergers. Demergers means split or division of a company into two two parts. Such divisions may take place for various internal or external factors. So suppose you're dealing into 4 or 5 types of product lines, and then one is not profitable to you. You decide to demerge that unit. Internal factors generally consist of split in family rather than lack of competition on the part of management. Like it could be आपका वो unit profitable नहीं है, or there may be in Hindu family businesses there could be any family issue जो आपको वो demerge कर देते हो, आप उसको split कर देते हो उस company को, part company को share sale कर देते हो, that is called as demerger. For example, DCM Limited was divided into 4 separate companies which are being managed by different family members of late Sri Ram. Generally happens with Hindu family businesses that whenever there is some dispute or whenever there is some issue, they tend to make 3 or 4 segments of the similar set of companies for their children or for different people that run different businesses on their own. Right? That is called as demerger. कितनी मिनट की होगी? ये तो लेसन बहुत बड़ी है।
बड़ी है?
हाँ।
25 से ऊपर होगी।
और करानी है 15।
हाँ 10
Then another terminology that relates to mergers and acquisitions. Mergers and acquisitions were expansion type of corporate restructuring. And then we talk about contraction. This the earlier terminology that demerger we talked about was also contraction, corporate restructuring. Then is spin-off. Spin-off is this kind of demerger involves division of company into wholly owned subsidiary of parent company by distribution of all its shares of subsidiary company on pro rata basis. अब आपकी कंपनी में आपको लग रहा है वो प्रॉफिटेबल नहीं है और कोई और रीजन है, आप उसको स्पिन ऑफ करना चाहते हो, तो आप उस कंपनी होली ओन आपकी सब्सिडरी है, आप उसको एक सब्सिडरी शो कर दोगे और उसके शेयर्स किसी और को सेल कर दोगे, राइट? Into wholly owned subsidiary of the parent company by distribution of all its shares of subsidiary company on pro rata basis. Pro rata basis पे आप उसके shares को sell off कर दोगे, that is called as spin off. For example, Kotak Mahindra Finance Limited formed a subsidiary called Kotak Mahindra Capital Corporation by spinning off its investment banking division. There was a company called Kotak Mahindra Finance Limited जो हर तरह के finance में deal कर रही थी. फिर उन्होंने अपनी सब्सिडरी फॉर्म कर ली, उसके प्रो राटा बेसिस पे शेयर्स उधर ट्रांसफर करके कोटक महिंद्रा कैपिटल कॉर्पोरेशन बाय स्पिनिंग ऑफ दैट यूनिट ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंकिंग. Central features of spin-offs. Why spin-offs basically take place and what are these related to? Spin-offs are distribution of subsidiary shares to parent company shareholders. जो आपके पास subsidiary shares होते हैं, subsidiary company के shares होते हैं, वो आप parent company के shareholders में divide कर देते हैं. As such, no money comes into the parent company as a result. Now there is no monetary terminology, monetary transactions that are involved in spin-offs. Not necessarily. It could be, it could not be. It could not be. Right? No shares or assets of the subsidiary are sold to the market or to the acquirer. Now it is not sold to the other company. Rather, the spin-offs takes place between the holding, between the parent company and the subsidiary company. Right? Example: Dr. Reddy formed new drug development company called as Porcelain Pharma. Sun Pharma demerged our research and development wing as separate entities. Sun Pharma Advanced Research as company to reduce R&D costs. Now spin-offs are basically when you form a new entity or you form a subsidiary unit of yourself in order to in order to create another portfolio, separate portfolio in order to reduce the cost. These are called as spin-offs. Company before, it's the huge, just like the example says, the bigger box is the company before spin-off and the smaller one is the company after spin-off. Now it is spin off into 2 units. Company after spin-off. Then is equity carve-outs. Equity carve-outs are, it is also one set of, one type of spin-off or one type of demerger. The firm sells a part, for example 20%, 10,000 or less, of its wholly owned subsidiaries, common stock in the market. Spin-off में आपने क्या किया था कि आपकी जो कंपनी थी उसकी सब्सिडरी आपने अभी इक्विटी carve-out है कि सब्सिडरी कंपनी का जो कॉमन स्टॉक है वो आप मार्केट में सेल करते हो. This is similar to spin-off except that some part of the shareholders of a subsidiary company is offered to public through a public issue. Just like जैसे IPOs float होते हैं वैसे यहाँ पे कुछ percentage of the shares are sold to the kept open in the market for public issue, and then the parent company continues to enjoy the control over the subsidiary company by holding control in the shares. Now, very less amount, very less percentage of the subsidiary's common stock is sold in the market. Still, the ownership rights, still the decision making, the holding control stays with the holding company. Then is split ups. Another type of demerger is we talked about split up. We talked about demergers. We talked about spin-offs. We talked about equity carve-outs, and then is split ups. Split ups are division of the parent company into two or more separate companies, where parent company ceases to exist after demerger. इसमें क्या है कि आपकी एक parent company है जिसको आपने डीमर्ज कर दिया अलग अलग दो तीन सेगमेंट्स में और आपकी पेरेंट कंपनी बाद में एग्जिस्ट नहीं करती. दैट दे सीजेस द पेरेंट कंपनी सीजेस टू एग्जिस्ट. Like the new business entities took place for parent. Then is divestitures. These are sale of segment of a company for cash or for securities to an outside party. इसमें क्या है कि एक सेगमेंट ऑफ आप एक कंपनी का एक सेगमेंट सेल कर देते हो कैश के लिए या सिक्योरिटी बेसिस पे शेयर्स के बदले outside the company की सेल. Selling assets division subsidiaries to another corporations or combination of corporations or individuals. This is divestitures is when you sell one segment of the company either to another company or to group of corporations or to another person. आप एक सेगमेंट को किसी और को बेच देते हो. That is divestitures. Company before divestitures is the huge one, the big one. Buying company. The company after divestitures, the short one, the smaller one is the company that you sold. What does the company A do with this consideration? Now this is company after divestitures. ये छोटा सेगमेंट आपके पास है क्या? आप सेल कर दिया और ये बड़ा आपके पास आफ्टर डाइवेस्टिट्यूट रह गया. The features of divestitures. Features of divestitures are selling corporation typically receives consideration for the assets. जो आपने एसेट अपनी कंपनी का सेगमेंट सेल किया उसकी कंसिडरेशन आपको मिलती है, फाइनेंशियल कंसिडरेशन भी मिलती है और शेयर्स के बेसिस पे. दैट डिपेंड्स अपॉन कंपनी टू कंपनी, condition to condition की क्या consideration आप मिलते हो. But then you typically receive some consideration, either cash or securities, or you get some other assets with respect to them. Divestitures are typically taxable events for selling corporations. New basis for purchases. Now divestitures are taxable because you get in some remuneration, not remuneration but some consideration on the basis of selling this segment of your company. For example, JLR. This involves the sale of tangible or intangible assets of a company to generate cash. This is asset sale. Now, the fifth last terminology that we talk about in mergers and acquisitions is the contraction of any company. It is when you sell tangible or intangible assets of the company to generate cash. Cash के बदले आप कोई भी asset sale कर देते हो किसी को भी, that is called as asset sale. So this was all about mergers and acquisitions. We talked about the expansion and the contraction terminologies of corporate restructuring. Thank you.